Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and the rumors on the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I am joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Good to see you, Damon.
You as well. And Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Hey, Damon.
And this week we're talking about true next-gen games. Coming out of the Game Awards last week, we got some reveals and some teases of some next-gen only games that are coming next year and beyond. Ryan, let's begin with you and a game we've been waiting for a long time to see gameplay of. That's Hellblade 2, announced at the Game Awards 2 years ago, and we just now finally saw gameplay for that one. What were your impressions?
So happy to see it. It is a game. It's technically the first ever Xbox Series X game that was announced because the console was also announced at the Game Awards 2 years ago. But yeah, it looks fantastic. Now, the thing about this game, we know it's ultimately going to be on Unreal Engine 5, but Unreal Engine 5 is, as Epic has said, is still a work in progress. No games have shipped with it yet. So as great as that 6-minute gameplay presentation was, I have not read if it's been out there, I missed it, whether it's confirmed that demo was actually running on UE5 or not, or still UE4, and they're still going to port it over, obviously, and end up having an even better looking game by the time it's said and done. But the scale, the scope, the facial detail on Senua, just gorgeous game, which we expected from this, but loved it. It was definitely one of my two favorite things at the Game Awards this year.
It was very cool. It's obviously very, very moody. I loved the design of this sort of like decaying giant that they were trying to take down. They said that demonstration was entirely gameplay. I don't know if I'm convinced of that, though. There was lots of camera swooping around and some shots looked very cinematic, more cinematic than gameplay. I don't know. As impressive as it was, I don't know that I'm convinced it was 100% gameplay. Ryan, how about you?
But you've seen. I mean, we've seen that kind of thing. I mean, really, it's very Sony-ish. Like we've seen that stuff from Naughty Dog, and it's those kind of camera cuts in Engine with Spider-Man. So yeah, I absolutely believe it was gameplay, and it's just these engines and these talented developers are so good that you can get stuff like that that's super cinematic that really blurs the line between cinematic, pre-rendered and real-time gameplay. So yeah, I'm fully on board with the idea that was completely all in game.
Well, I look forward to seeing more of Hellblade 2. Jonathan, I know that you've been really looking forward to Suicide Squad Kills Justice League. Finally got to see some gameplay for that. What'd you think?
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of in-engine stuff previously with the story from DC Fandom, and this was our first look at actually things happening in the world that presumably we will all be able to do and make the crazy action happen among these four characters that we'll be playing as. I really enjoyed it for sort of the scope of it. I think, Ryan, you might have said this before on the show, but I think the more we see of it, the more I get sort of the Sunset Overdrive feelings and vibes from it. And so I hope it's able to channel that sort of sensibility married with, I think, what Rocksteady was really great about doing in the Batman Arkham franchise, which as that trilogy went on, the Batmobile sections notwithstanding in the final one, they had a really great escalation of both scope and scale of the environments that you were in and the variety of those, especially as they introduced new villains for Batman to go against. We got new looks at what sort of different parts of Gotham and Arkham could be like. And so the idea that we're now playing in such a wider scope of the DC universe seems to be reflected in the actual world that they're building. So we saw, I think, a lot of variety in terms of the gameplay, the gunplay, the effects that were all going off all around you. Obviously, each hero looks to play a bit differently, or anti-hero, I guess. Each one looks to play a bit differently. And so we saw a lot of variety there, a lot of really beautiful, vibrant, open spaces. I love the Arkham games. They're pretty dark most of the time. And this is a very more like daytime setting that we're seeing here. We're seeing a lot of more open spaces, a lot more of this metropolis. And so I really love seeing that. And I just hope it means, we'll get to go to all sort of aspects of that world once we get to jump into it.
Is your understanding of Suicide Squad that it is a Borderlands-like, intended to be played cooperatively with a group of your friends? Or do you think it's more of a single-player game where you can swap between the different characters?
Yeah, so from what we've been told so far, there's still a lot of details, I think, left to go on this game, but you will be able to play single player or cooperatively, and my guess is it's going to be the most fun when you have all four of these characters going together into the action. It's actually players controlling that stuff, but hopefully it's fun enough in single player as well that you get time to explore. At least for me, when I'm playing multiplayer, it's kind of about getting into the action as much as possible. Whereas with single player, I will double back and look in every nook and cranny of an open world to find things. And so I'm very curious to see what both flavors of this game will play like. But I'm hopeful that both are fun in that regard.
Now, Forspoken is a new game for Square Enix, and it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive. We actually got a quote from the co-director, Takafumi Terada. We reached out to ask, what does the PlayStation 5 make possible developing this game that wasn't possible before? And he said, a unique feature is essentially that from the onset of development, we decided to take a procedural method to development. And so when building out this open world, the landscape is automated, essentially where the trees and the forests are built out automatically in this procedural format. So looking at that unfold through development, it really made us feel this was futuristic, that we're in the next gen, essentially. That's how it really felt like through development. Procedurally generating, trees and other objects in this open world. Is that surprising to you, Jonathan? 'Cause I guess I just assumed developers have been doing that for a while. Like in Far Cry 6, was every tree and bush placed manually in that map?
Every single tree. Yeah, just like we plant trees in real life, we plant them in game. No, I think probably the big word takeaway that I get from that is the use of the word onset. It seems like this was something that was very much built in and baked into the idea of the way this world was designed from the get-go. And I think the way that we can see that from at least what we've seen of Forspoken, Matt Kim got to go see a hands-off preview. We haven't gotten hands-on with it just yet, but that world in every trailer we see looks to be huge and massive and open. And that comes with its own worries of, well, will there be actually interesting things to do and explore in that world? But I think it also lets them get a scale and a breadth and depth of a world that, from a glance looks kind of awe-inspiring. And so I think this allowed them to probably do that at a pace where they weren't maybe worried about the minutia of minute by minute of where you're going. Is each tree worth, stopping to look at? Sure. But I assume it has to do sort of with the way they approached it from the beginning. That's sort of my takeaway there from that quote.
All right, Alan Wake 2 was a big reveal last week. We didn't get to see gameplay of that one, just a little teaser trailer. But Ryan, you got an interview about Alan Wake 2, is that right?
Yeah, I got to sit down with Sam Lake, the creative director and writer at Remedy, who of course goes all the way back to the origin of the studio. And this was my other favorite thing from the Game Awards. And boy, like I said, no gameplay. We don't know what it looks like yet. But in sitting down with Sam, I did learn a little bit more. So it is a full-on survival horror game rather than a third-person kind of dark, spooky action adventure, which the first one was totally next-gen only, due out in 2023, and it's also going to be rated M, whereas the first one was rated T for teen. So they're going to be leaning much more into the darker and possibly more violent side. And this is going to be done on Remedy's in-house Northlight engine that they build all of their stuff with, which we've seen some really impressive work out of in the past from Remedy, but it'll be a next-gen version of it. And Sam told me this will be the most beautiful game that Remedy has ever done, and no reason to doubt him on that. So yeah, it's going to be a wait. We've got a year to 2 years effectively to wait on this, but boy, am I extremely excited for Alan Wake 2 after all these years.
Jonathan, I believe you reviewed Remedy's last original game, Control.
Yes.
You also excited for Alan Wake 2?
Oh, I can't wait. I was a huge fan of Alan Wake when it first came out as well. And I think, you see the progression of, especially, obviously Sam's interest in storytelling, but just their world design and their creation. They really like to play with how they can twist what your expectations are of just walking into a usual reality. So whether it was, the Pacific Northwest of Alan Wake, or what you think is going to be a pretty drab and boring office building in Control, they're able to, even with that game, twist and turn this world into so many different things, whether it's taking you to places you would never expect it to, or just to actually physically change the world around you as you're going through it. They were already accomplishing so many very cool, both visual and design, achievements in that game. So I can't wait to see what they're doing. Very much focused on new, all-powerful hardware. and to see what they're able to leverage there. I think there's so much potential in the way they've been building out. Also the, Remedy cinematic universe that they're kind of building as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the other new announcement that's very cool, very exciting, even though we didn't get to see any gameplay of it, was Wonder Woman. And Warner Brothers has since confirmed that we will see the return of the Nemesis system, being that this is developed by Monolith, developers of Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor. Ryan, you excited about this?
I mean, this is a premier developer. I think Monolith's a little underrated in the grand scheme of things. That their resume is extremely impressive, going all the way back. For Damon, you and I are old. Blood, if you remember that first-person shooter, which was very funny, kind of in that Doom, Duke Nukem era of things. Then they did a mech game called Shogo, which was actually really great too. They went on to do two what have become cult classic first-person shooters, the two No One Lives Forever games, and then they were acquired by Warner Brothers at some point along the way, and have made these two excellent Middle Earth, Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor. So very talented studio, and Wonder Woman is a hero we have just not seen really done, really given a full starring role in a game before, and throw in Nemesis with her golden lasso, and there could be some interesting gameplay opportunities there.
Jonathan, how are you feeling about Wonder Woman?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. We're sort of in this wonderful moment where WB is now making so many DC games, and I hope they're all, interesting in their own right. But I think what's great about sort of a focused Wonder Woman game, especially using the Nemesis system, they've said they want to use it for both friends and foes. And so I'm really curious to see how that plays out, because we do have sort of an idea, especially with Middle Earth, of how, angering an orc or making an orc essentially bow down to your power, how that works out. But I'm very curious to see what that means with other Amazonians, if you really are helping them out, what that will mean in terms of completing certain side quests or completing, collectibles in an environment. I think it could start to change how you approach that stuff on a reward level, where it's like your rewards may not just be cool, an extra bit of equipment. It could be, you can call on this person for help later on. I think you could really add to the complexity and the ways you approach combat and taking down, I assume, bigger story missions in that way. So I'm really excited for it. As we were saying, Monolith has such a great pedigree, and I think they did such great work with those Middle Earth games that giving them the Wonder Woman franchise to kind of take those ideas and really, extrapolate on them. I can't wait to see what they do.
Jonathan, are you saying it will be the Friendasis system?
I hope they call it that.
They can have that for free. It's fine.
Someone at an E3 conference has to say that with a straight face.
WB, patent that.
Patent
that.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool to have some true next-gen games to look forward to. I don't know about anyone else, but we're a year into these consoles' life cycles. I'm ready to start seeing some games that are really pushing the limits of what both of these new consoles can do. We'd love to know, dear viewer, which of these games you're most looking forward to. But first, we have the results of last week's poll. We asked you, what would get you to subscribe to Sony's Game Pass? We were talking about the rumored Game Pass service that Sony is reportedly working on and could be revealed early next year. The winning result with almost 60% of the votes was day one exclusives. Although, as we were talking, we don't know how likely that is, unfortunately. And then way down at the bottom, only 2% said early demo access would get them to subscribe. Very interesting. We should find out next year whether or not Sony's answer to Game Pass is real. And the new poll for you to vote on for next week. What was your favorite next-gen game out of the Game Awards? Hellblade 2, Suicide Squad, Forspoken, Alan Wake 2. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we will share the results with you next week. And that will do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. We'll be back next week with more PS5 and Xbox Series X news. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Alan working behind the scenes, making this episode possible. We'll see you next week.